I call this District of Clearwater regular council meeting for Tuesday, July 11th, 2023 at 2 o'clock to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are fortunate to gather together today on the unceded territory of the Simpcw people who've been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Are there any late items that anybody would like to add to the agenda? If not, are there, can I get somebody to move the agenda as presented? Seconded by, okay, all those in favor? Okay, and that passes. Are there any conflicts of interest, known conflict of interest, or pecuniary interest that anybody would like to declare at this time? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to item 7, we have a delegation from the Wells Grey Community Forest Wellness Center presentation. We'll get the mic set up, and Darren, you can come up and present from the podium. Okay, and then we have the presentation up online. I'm seeing that. Those that don't have it in front of you. And somebody signal. I see Councillor Sim coming in, so we might want to wait a catch her.
Does seem to be clicking.
There we go. So there's a technical issue. Can we test the click? Try it again now?
I can see it on your screen, but it doesn't change on
Not
that TV.
translating. There we go.
There we go.
Cool.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Director Sim, are there any declared known conflicts of interest or pecuniary interest that you'd like to declare?
Yes, I'm meeting Canada, but I haven't seen the package, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Darren. Mr. Coates, start anytime you like.
Great. Well, thanks to Mayor and Council for having us present today. I know many of you in the community through a number of different hats. When I first moved here, I was just Barb's husband, but today I don't come as Barb's husband or the principal of the high school. I come representing the Wells Grey Community Forest. I'm a member of the Health and Wellness Committee, which I guess is a subcommittee of the Wells Grey Community Forest.
Correction, is that corporation or society or?
Corporation.
Thank you.
Yep. Oops, kick your thing. And right off the bat, the reason I'm here is to request from council a letter of support for this concept and project. And I'll talk about what that is through my presentation, and then of course take questions at the end if there's time or if that's part of the process. So Wells Grey Community Forest, I'm sure everybody is well aware of what they are and what they do in town. I'm going to talk about a few of the benefits that they bring. I can get the slide deck, Court. Can you advance it for me? So there was a desire within the Wells Grey Community Forest, on top of the other good work they do supporting a number of projects, to have a legacy, larger project go forward that would benefit the community and would benefit all sectors of the community. Some of the projects they've funded previously, probably some of you are aware. I know that most people have been in the community for a while and have probably been touched by some of these projects. I know within my role with community soccer, the high school, the outdoor club, minor hockey, that there has been sponsorship of all of those organizations, and there's some of them listed here as well. Thank you very much. So quite a significant number of, or amount of funds that has been distributed throughout the community over the last while from the community forest to the benefit of a wide segment of the population. The project that I'm here to chat about, or the idea, just have a bit of a delay on the slides, I guess. Can you advance the next slide for me there? Thanks. Is a health and wellness center. There you go. I can keep on going, and I'm sure we can get that on. So currently there's a significant amount of money that's been earmarked for this project. I think you have a copy of the slide deck, is that correct? So even if we can't see it, you have
Yeah,
it to
council
reference to?
does. I see it's back online, but
Perfect, okay, thank you, Mayor.
there you go.
So close to $8 million, so a significant amount of funding, some from the Wells Gray Community Forest and some local corporate donations as well. The Wells Gray Community Forest Health and Wellness Center Committee, that's a bit of a mouthful. Next slide, please. Looked at this and paid for an outside body, Colliers, to do a really preliminary feasibility study, which was done, as you can see, in October of last year. And it was to sort of look at, is there a perceived need within the community, and what might that project look like? This was done in October, and of course it's very preliminary. There's some things in here that may or may not come to pass. I guess you could kind of call it a little bit of a shotgun approach, looking at options. Can you go to the next slide, please? The feasibility study did some really preliminary consultation. You'll recognize many of the names that are on there, and they represent, at least at high level, a bit of a broad stroke of different segments of Clearwater. Can you advance the slide, please? Thanks. So the feasibility study also looked or included or wrapped in some of the data that was collected by the DOC previously, and also included some information from interviews. And the short story is that at least the folks who we talked to, or Colliers talked to on the behalf of the Community Forest Board, felt that there was probably some desire for some more recreation opportunities within the community. Can you advance the next slide, please? Some of the specific things that came out that might be considered maybe out of the box. Some of these other things that kind of go into the larger view of health and wellness besides just physical exercise. So some space for socialization. We'd reached out to SIMF. They talked about need for a gathering space for themselves, for their community. And Interior Health talked about some needs within their scope as well. Can you go to the next slide, please? Building amenities. We are at the very, very start of this project, and so again, you could kind of think of this as a shotgun approach or a wish list. It will probably come to pass that not all of these things might land in the final project if it in fact goes ahead. But they could have encompassed a broad spectrum of what people had mentioned during the initial consultation. So some fitness and recreation things which you might have seen in other communities if you had visited. Perhaps some housing if it worked in one of the venues. So housing, so we apparently have a shortage of housing, and we think that might continue, particularly for healthcare professionals who come in on a temporary basis. And we also looked at some partnerships for use of that facility, which is the third box over there. Can you advance the next slide, please? And really, the idea of the center of the facility, wherever it may land or what it might look like, is this idea we're sort of moving to over the last number of years around health and wellness encompassing this broader perspective, not just I'm going to go and lift weights or I'm going to go for a run, but something that's probably more inclusive to a larger spectrum of the community and our sort of awareness of mental health as well as physical health and social connections. Can you go to the next slide, please? A few of these amenities we were able to capture images of, possibilities from other facilities around the province. One of the things was mentioned was a place for folks to walk. That came from our seniors community primarily. Some cardio and weight training, if you can advance to the next one. This is from a facility down in the Okanagan, which I would guess would be larger scope than we're looking at, but at least gives you a sense of what the concept is. Next slide, please. In some of the models, we've seen spaces so you can have health professionals sort of cohabitate right next to the area where they might have people do some of that work. Next slide, please. Oh, you're already there, thanks. Indoor turf was another idea that was shared out. In some communities they have this, and it allows for more indoor recreation, especially during the colder months. Next slide, aquatic area. Again, some centers have this, some don't. That's a beautiful picture of a fairly large facility, but it kind of gives you an idea of some of the things on the wish list. Residential space to support professionals, which I mentioned earlier. We've heard from various healthcare folks that sometimes it's hard to have those professionals come into the community and be able to find accommodation. We've been talking to a number of folks about this concept or this idea. We have a letter of support from SIMP, which is up there for you to see. Not included, because they came later, but we also have, I'll mention, letter of support from Director Onslow from Area B from the TNRD, and Director Yusuf Tazo, Director from Area A from the TNRD. And we are actively, besides coming here, we're actively looking for more letters of support. Why are we asking for letters of support from a wide or a broad spectrum? So when we go to pursue further funding and approvals, those will be important. There is a sizable chunk of money, but I'm sure that most of you are aware that a facility of this, whether it's a smaller end of the scope that you might imagine or larger, it's going to definitely cost more than the allocated funding that's already there. Possible locations. So again, we're looking at different options, and some of the slide deck later on talks about that. So we've identified this possible location and footprint, central, close to the hospital, close to the old folks home, close to the school, well connected through a trail network, and we think it would fit there. So we are pursuing acquisition of land in the areas indicated as well, as another parallel effort besides getting letters of support. That's just sort of a close-up. If you didn't recognize those photos, they are kind of behind the high school in that sort of forested area there. Perceived benefits, I've kind of covered many of these, but really providing health and wellness activities in a center or ability for a wide range of people around the community. I think one of the popular phrases is cradle to grave. So meant to encompass opportunities for young families, folks who might be in the middle ages, all the way to our senior citizens. Concerns. So if we're asking you for a letter of support, you know, it sounds everybody would probably love something that looks like those pictures within the community. I think the real challenge, how do you build and or operate a facility like this in a way that's sustainable for the community? And really that's the $1 million question. And I think if the project ends up moving forward, it's really the concern and the solution or the problem that we need to keep forefront is how would it run in the future? I think raising the capital funds to build it, even though it might seem daunting to have to raise another 20 or 30 million, the group believes that is possible based on conversations with a number of parties and models that we've seen in other communities that we have investigated. It's really the ongoing operational cost. And that's something that we have forefront. So how can we design the building? How can we design the scale and the scope of it to keep those things manageable? On to the next slide. We've looked at a number of different examples from around the province. Some include facilities like this are run by a nonprofit. Some, as you're obviously aware, are run by a municipal government. And we would like to explore all of those options. We also have heard, or I read the newspaper and chat to folks in town, that there's some thought or energy going into doing some expansion of the Sportsplex. And so somewhere between funding and desire and looking at future possibilities, we think there might be some possibilities of at least having further discussions and investigating ideas to see if there is a way forward based on the group coming forward with funding and energy to bring something positive for the community. That ends my slide deck, my presentation. I don't know if it's typical, Mayor, for the council to ask questions or not. Okay.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I'll defer to council first. I have several questions, but councilors have questions at this point. Hey, go ahead, Councilor Herring.
Less of a question, just super excited to see this. I think that, we've all heard that this is a need in the community, and I think that your work confirms that. I think the operating costs are the tricky bit. Looking at 303,000 as the deficit there, that's around a 5% tax increase, right? So that's a hard sell sort of thing, and a big chunk of money. So I think some form of, what's that? It's 10%? I thought it was 60,000 per percentage, but 30. So it's 10% then. So I think we got to find a way to partner. I think that's a key thing for us, and obviously we can't make decisions about that now. But that's my sense hearing the proposal. Super exciting, but definitely a big ask.
Yeah. Can I make one comment back? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. The numbers that are included, because you have the feasibility study, as you can sort of appreciate, are based on kind of like model A that they calculated. Which I would say is perhaps the Cadillac edition of possibilities. And I think one of the things which, of course, would have to be forefront would be, which version of this thing we have in our head could we actually build and run sustainably? It may not be the Cadillac version, so maybe the figure that you're quoting might not be accurate for what we end up at. Yeah, because I agree that sort of deficit is daunting, and I'm not sure that the community would want to take on that.
Thanks.
But I think there's options. There's a spectrum of choices to be made there. So.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Councillor Frizzle.
Just, you said your committee says it's possible to raise 20.
Well, we have, sorry, I missed the last part of your question.
It's easy to say. I'd like to more specific.
Sure. I don't have all the specifics yet. As you can appreciate, we're fairly early in the process. Because we have some letters of support already, and we anticipate from other meetings we've had besides this one that we'll have a number of other letters of support coming in. We believe that we'd be a good candidate if there was federal, provincial funding made available. We've had conversations with a number of other corporate entities that sound very interested in making sizable donations. And I personally have been involved in a lot of fundraising within the community for a number of projects, and So I know sometimes that it may take a while and a bit of a journey, but I believe there is a lot of grant money out there. I guess I can point to my work with the Wells Gray Outdoor Club that the work that we've been able to do to build that trail network. If you would have asked someone, well, how are you going to get $700,000? I wouldn't have had an answer from at the start of the process, but year by year, we kind of like were able to raise those funds. And I know that that's a smaller project, but we also didn't start with $8 million, so.
Okay, further questions? Okay, I'll start asking some of mine then, I guess. Who exactly is committing the $7.95 million?
So that was listed on one of the slides, Mayor Blackwell. It's a combination of the Commission and the Wells Gray Community Forest Corporation.
Okay, thank you. Some of the scale of this really concerns me. The Prince George Canfor Aquatic Center was just finished with 21 times our population base to support it. And that came in at $40 million and actually has less items on it than you have proposed here. What are your budget estimates based on? And when can the District of Clearwater see the Colliers report?
I think I didn't know what you'd been sent by other members, but I think that there's no need to keep the Colliers report secret. I thought you actually had it.
We have a draft presentation, a slide deck, but we have not seen the actual data that Colliers based this on. I have seen other reports. There's one that was issued by a community group in the South Caribou, which actually is about 23 pages, but it's not terribly accurate, so I haven't shared it around because it was by a community group. And it has some similar data that seems to appear in here. But speaking to the CRD, who actually hosts this on a hidden website on their page, it's not accurate. It's at least 30 to 50% out of date. And the numbers on here, which are being quoted, though they mirror, they're already 30 to 50% out of date.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers, if they published that in October last year, I think we are all aware of the rate of inflation. And I would say even the numbers that you had commented you believe are low,
Yes.
Mayor Blackwell, are probably, I bet you Colliers would even say they're low now, as if the cost of my grocery cart is reflected in building materials, I'm sure they're low. They looked at a square footage, which I believe is in the feasibility study, and mapped it off from there. I think that those are really preliminary guesses because we don't know what's going to go in there for amenities yet. And your numbers that you're referencing in Prince George, maybe they are more accurate. And I think what we can include will be determined by budget. So if it turns out at the end of the day that we're able to raise 20 or 25 or 30, and your comment is, well, it costs 40, then obviously the building would need to be scaled down to budget. And I think it's typical to have some contingencies built in the construction plan for things like inflation, so.
Thank you. The next one, speaking to the CRD director for sports programs, and they run 2 aquatic centers yesterday. They operate on 5 times the population base per aquatic center that we do, and both those centers, their operating annual costs are between $1.5 and $2.5 million, with about 20% recovered from fees. And they are smaller in scope than what's being presented here by a long shot. I really struggle to figure out where a $600,000 annual operating budget would be based on. And even that $600,000 budget, which I think is at least 40 to 50, well, I'm gonna actually say 60 to 80% low, just on a pool, because I can look at Chetwynd for numbers from 2018. The 600,000 would be a 20% instant tax increase for the citizens of Clearwater before we even get into borrowing costs, long-term maintenance, and replacement costs of such a facility. So I'm just I'll leave you with that one there, and I think that's the end of, I do have one more question though.
Could I make a comment?
Yeah,
back
you
to
can, yeah.
I think that some of those are, again, predicated on the feasibility study looked at one model, and some of the figures you're quoting from the feasibility study are based on this and that whole big laundry list of things that we threw out. And of course, I think everybody would love to have the Cadillac and the big long laundry list, but I would argue that there would be value in having some more facilities and whatever those turn out to be that are in line with what we can afford and raise would still bring benefit. So whether it looks like some of the photos or whatever the place that you're referencing, Mayor Blackwell, it may not, but I do believe that, you know, there is some demonstrated desire from the population, and I think, you know, your question is the one I think is the elephant in the room. I think, of course, it would be irresponsible to build something that we can't afford to run. I don't think that's what we're proposing. I think we're saying we'd like to provide some more facilities. There's some funding behind it. We believe there's some need. Can we, as we work through this process, you know, work with partners to say, okay, there's some need, what can we afford, right? It might not be the shiny Cadillac version. It may not include all those laundry list of items, but I'm sure that, you know, some of the funding we brought to the table could increase some of the availability of recreation space for citizens.
For sure, and to be absolute 100%, I think everybody in this community at some level desires a pool, desires a weight room, desires, I know the seniors desire an indoor walking path and more space. You know, we have some good amenities here already. I think the real question, and you've hit it here, is scale. And at this particular point, the scale of this, the ability to, you know, some of the proposals here at $7 or $8 million, unless you hit $25 million, there's absolutely zero ability for the Clearwater to even get into the boring category. When right now I've got people calling me names to get Dunn Lake Road repair. We can't afford to replace 3/4 of the infrastructure in this town, and we need to do that in the next 20 to 40 years. My duty as an elected official here is to protect the citizens of Clearwater and ask these questions, and that's why I have to ask these questions. And I really am concerned with the lack of detail and asking for a letter of support at this point. And I will also note that the two letters, though they are on TNRD stationery, do not represent support from the TNRD. They do from those individuals, but it is not TNRD support. And right now, so that everybody is aware of the conversation on the current Sportsplex, which is also on leased school board land, to my understanding, the TNRD pays 40% of those the costs for operation of that. So I'm quite sure that the TNRD, in order to meet the population base to support something like this at 4,200 people, if you take into Blue River and our area surrounding Wells Gray, would need to be on board with this as well. The other factor here is that this would, no matter what, for boring for the District of Clearwater or for acceptance of supporting this through operating costs, go to a referendum. And therefore the citizens of the Clearwater would decide. And having seen the referendums fail in Quesnel and the one get stopped in the South Caribou because it was apparent from a phone survey, even though the person that was one of the directors of the CRD did tell me that they wish they'd run it at forward so they could just prove by referendum that there wasn't support. I strongly doubt that the senior citizens, especially in this community, would accept over a 20% tax increase to operate something.
Can I make a comment back?
You absolutely can.
I agree with all your concerns, Mayor Blackwell. Again, I think that some of those concerns are predicated on one version. And I believe that with the funding and energy that are sort of being brought to this, that there must be a way, and I know there's all these infrastructure, I read the council reports and I get that, and I get that you and the council have a responsibility to take care of those. So I'm not coming to you suggesting that, you know, you sign on or support that kind of increased tax bill. I think that is the million, I don't know if it's $1 million. That's the challenge. But I do believe that there's I have to believe there's a way forward when we bring $8+ million to the table to do something good for the community. And I don't think, again, I'll speak for me, of course not for you, is I don't think that the district saying that they're in support of having some more recreation amenities for their citizens is the same as tying the DOC to a financial obligation, which is not what I'm asking for, or the group isn't asking for.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Sim?
Thanks very much. Yeah, there's probably lots more to flesh out and definitely keeping an eye on cost. What I am curious about is the component for the turf area, which I'm assuming would be indoor soccer and that. Was there any consideration for multi-purpose of that space? So if we're looking at an economic model, is there room for some sort of conference or meeting spaces? Is there room to consider other revenue generators that might offset?
Yeah, when we talked to Colliers, and this kind of paralleled some of the stuff that SIMP was interested in, it was brought up that there's a limited number of large meeting spaces, and I think of the ski hill, who sort of reinvented itself. I don't sit on the board, I just, as an observer, have kind of reinvented themselves as a venue for large gatherings that I'm only guessing helps them stay afloat and generate money, that there might be some parallels to that concept. One of the things that SIMP wanted was a gathering space, and one of the thoughts is if a space like that, like the green track that you reference got included, that would be something that they would be very in favor of for their use. So.
Thank you.
Further questions from anybody on council? Does staff have any questions at this point?
Did this project consider any affordable housing?
We talked about housing for mostly for professionals. We had heard from from the local health, yes, Interior Health, thank you, that there was a need for that. So we hadn't talked about affordable housing, but again, depending on where the project ends up landing, these sort of discussions around could it be beneficial in multiple areas, I think are areas to explore. I think saying no to any of those is preliminary at this point, or early.
Did you consider any different scenarios? I know you provided one, which seems like the Cadillac, but have you provided like Toyota?
Really, it was, the short answer is, I think that is to be determined once we get down the road and go, okay, what's our budget that we have, both for construction and both to run it. This was, what would you love to see in it? So I refer to it as the Cadillac version. And the idea, I guess, would be to scale it to whatever we can. I mean, if it turns out that we don't get one more dime and we come to the table with $8 million, I would still argue that you could probably do something really good for the community for $8 million. And with sort of some intelligent design and collaboration, figure out a way to run it that doesn't include a ginormous tax increase for folks.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Sim?
Yeah, just one more, because there's been a lot of discussion that's been had in these various questions. I just want to go back for clarification on what the letter of support would be. So is the letter of support for the Cadillac version, for pursuing a large-scale project, pursuing something that would aid and abet? Because I think without having the numbers, it would be difficult to be tied to a financial model as the District of Clearwater, noting the taxation.
We don't have a budget at this point, nor do we have a scope of project. What appears in the study is, here's one version. So I think the letter of support is for the concept in general and not a particular dollar figure, either in construction or maintenance costs going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Further questions? Okay. Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Coase, who is on this subcommittee steering this project? And the reason I ask this is because a $30+ million project, with the anticipated ownership being transferred to the District of Clearwater eventually.
That's
as a
only,
model,
that's one possible model.
or another third party being involved in that, if it is to be transferred to the district. I'm very curious about the next steps in engaging the district staff in preparing some of the financials around this to better inform council so that they are able to assess this from a wholesome perspective in order to decide the future of their support or not. But it really starts with the steering committee, and where does the District of Clearwater fits into that picture of steering a project of this size in the community?
Sorry, I didn't catch. There was a couple of questions, I
So
think,
the
buried
first
in
one
there.
is, who are the members of the specific steering committee of the corporation? If you're able to disclose that. And then, and at what point would you be handing over enough numbers and enough detail that the District of Clearwater could participate and analyze such numbers? And you can add some more to that if you wish for clarification.
Well, I think we'd be open to sending over that. I would, before I sort of share any information, I think it's my duty to check with the Wells Gray Community Forest Corporation and say, here's the request for information. Because I want to be careful. I don't sit on the board. I'm just a member of the committee. And as far as when we would be ready to send over more information, I think it's going to be a process and the numbers are going to evolve. I think one possibility could be, you know, some regular conversations around here's where we are, here's our next step. Hey, what do you know? I know that you, Mr. Blackwell, Mayor Blackwell, you know, have a lot of experience and you referenced a lot of other information from contacts. That would be awesome, valuable information to kind of bring on board so that we
But
could.
you hired a professional organization, Colliers. I mean,
Yep.
that's a Cadillac organization. And I was able to make simple phone calls or look on websites and research this stuff and find out very detailed information within the course of a day or so. I did most of this research after receiving your report as part of the agenda package.
And
And I'm saying, I mean, why aren't we to some level where we have that detail that we can present to council at this point? Because you're asking us to make a letter of support based on a large number of options. And in doing such a letter of support, at some basic level, we are committing the taxpayers of Clearwater to being part of this project.
I disagree, respectfully. And yeah, we hired Colliers. They had a good reputation. They came recommended. It sounds like you're trying to say that that was a bad choice from, if I read your innuendo.
I'm saying that currently I have less information from Colliers than I do from a citizens group from 100 Mile House that did it on the kitchen table.
I think we'd love to have more conversations, and if you or the council has a request and say, hey, can we have this? Can we talk, did Colliers give you anything else? We would be happy to share
And I would love
anything
that.
and everything.
I would love to see the Colliers report. I think that's very important for any decision moving forward for council. Councillor Sipp.
Just on that, is this the only report from Colliers?
I believe so. I think that's
So
what we
this is
paid
it,
for
like
and
what we-
delivered.
what you-
I
what
don't
is-
think we have anything else hiding, so.
I can't see how that's accurate. I'm hearing that it was $85,000 potentially spent on Colliers. How can that be accurate?
I don't know off the top of my head what the bill was. Folks are expensive, I'm guessing, when you hire them to go and do interviews and write this up. And you know, we're happy to share anything that we have with
I
you.
desperately await further information from the corporation. Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Director Klassen.
Just one further question. In the funding. Mayor Blackwell, yeah.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Mayor Blackwell, on one of the slides, 54, I think where it says the currently committed, the total of $7.95 million. My understanding, and please correct me if it's not accurate, but the commission is a committee of the council. Has council committed $3.2 million toward this fund?
To my knowledge, no. Further questions? If not, thank you for your presentation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I'm sorry that, I get a little bit rough on you, but it is my duty to protect the taxpayers of Clearwater and ask these questions. It is my duty, sworn as being part of this table, to do so as well. I think at a bottom line, I think there are lots of opportunities for expanded recreation, expanded facilities in this town. Even in your presentation, you mentioned the second floor of the Sportsplex. In the past, the District of Clearwater is looking for to expand Dutch Lake Beach, parking there, expanded trails, facilities and stuff as well. I think there are lots of opportunities for recreational expansion in this community, so I look forward to seeing what the next version of this looks like. Thank you.
Great. I hope we can have further conversations.
Absolutely can. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.1, minutes of the regular council meeting held June 20th, 2023. There is a recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting held June 20th, 2023 be adopted as presented. What is the desire of council? A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by Councillor Bratton. Any errors or omissions? If none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. No items under 9 or 10, no unfinished items. Moving on to item 13, Mayor's Report. Council has this on table, but I'll read most of the high points out loud for the record. On Wednesday, June 21st, I attended a local health planning session at the hospital. Really good news that the hospital has been very successful at filling many vacant positions and actually doubling up in a few departments, especially around the lab x-ray. The ambulance service is in need of part-time and on-call staff, though. The former head of the station has moved on to another position in the Okanagan. So our favorite ambulance paramedic Dan is now the interim station crew chief. I also participated in a new recruitment video being done by IHA, which is fantastic news that they're investing in site-specific recruitment for Clearwater. On June 30th, I attended a special council meeting, and then we get to the fun of Canada Day, and I think all the rest of you are going to want to talk about this, but thank you to Councillor McKenzie for being the guy on the right there as we pumped out 600 burgers and hot dogs in about 3.5 hours, and I think my shoes will never be the same with the amount of burger grease on them. And a huge thank you especially to staff for prepping, for setting up, for being there for the event. So much was done in advance of this that made it a success, that we basically were able to walk in and, with a few minor tweaks, pull off an excellent post-COVID event that got the community back together. So thank you. In the last 2 weeks, I've had two conversations with two parliamentary secretaries, topics of discussion, mostly focused with the two of them around the River Road and where that's going. Nothing to announce at this point, but I can say it is still an active file with the province, so they have not given up on the concept. Many discussions on infrastructure, as I hinted to in the earlier presentation. We have dramatic infrastructure repair needs in this town, and yes, I hear people on Dunn Lake Road, but I also know we need improvements to the water and sewer systems in order to take on potentially the 275 new development lots and units that seem to be floating around in our agendas. As well, I did a bunch of calls on the earlier research on the presentation as well, and for the next 3 days I'll be at UBCM meetings in Vancouver, where I hope to be able to get the ear of a few more people in government to help with some of the issues we have. And that is my report. Moving on to Councillor Bratton.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. I don't have a ton to report, but Canada Day, I'd like to thank staff so immensely. It was well run. Elsid and Leanne were fantastic contributors, major planners there while we were there. Everybody else that showed up all the community that came was amazing. I have to do a little shout out to my sister because I made her go to work, and she's from Abbotsford, and she came up for one day. She had to work the whole day.
And she has the same laugh as you,
Yeah.
so it was like being in an echo chamber sometimes. It was fabulous, though. Thank you.
So that was super fun. Afterwards, I personally planned a nightlight float, and apparently the community thought that was really super cool. So I'd like to continue that and do another one, and hopefully maybe down the road we'll be able to do Canada Day yearly, have something like that. But we'll see how that goes. And happy birthday, Bill, by the way. And I attended agenda setting on Wednesday, July 4th, and that was super interesting. I did not know I had to go. So sorry, you all get to learn this with me. Anyways, and I had one other thing and I've forgotten it. So thank you very much.
If you think of it, just bring it up later. Moving on to Councillor Frizzle.
Thank you. Yes, Canada Day was a great day. Everything that everybody said, but it was really nice to see the community out having such a good time. It's a lake filled with paddle boaters and swimmers. But it was also great to see tourists there and going on about how they love the area, and then they got this community and having a burger and being able to. So, and I'd also like to thank. It was a fun day, and it wasn't without you guys, it wouldn't have happened. I also attended just this last week. I attended a Tourism Wells Grey meeting. It was hard to get quorum because all the tourism operators are so busy with tourists. So that's a good thing. And the info center visits are increasing by individuals and by buses. So they're very busy. They're very excited. They've taken a volunteer and have hired her. So it's good to see things happening. I came down the hill last night and I'm seeing all the restaurants are filled. Everywhere going for walks, it's nice to see. And today I attended a photo op with Clearwater and District Hospice Society, the Wells Grey Country Senior Society, the District of Clearwater staff, and the man shed out at the greeting booth behind the hospital on that pathway. Everybody wanted a picture. All the people involved again. That was really good, and I think collaboration of the community comes together. That's my report.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Herring.
Yep, Canada Day was great. Nice to see everybody out there for sure. In the last couple weeks, also noticed a proliferation of complaints about driving issues and bicycle safety, particularly in the area stretching from Raft subdivision all the way up to the top of Steggs Hill and the Flats. Definitely seen some poor behavior myself. I spoke with Sergeant Simpson from the RCMP, who does some bike patrols as well, and he also mentioned that he's seen some really poor driving behavior towards cyclists. So it is something I think we need to be aware of. It's a big thing. Our bike pathways and infrastructure that we create plays a factor in that. I will say in the last couple weeks I've been riding around and I'm starting to notice the pinch points, and I recommend everybody on council grab a bike, try and take some of our multi-use path, and then figure out where to go when they end. It's a very tricky thing sometimes, and so it might illustrate some of the problems. Another one I really picked up on the info board was stories about people driving in the bike lane in Steggs Hill due to the line painting issue. Someone's behind some kids honking their horn, which I've actually seen a couple times this year. The strange thing is whether or not there's a bike lane, that's not allowed. If you're on a bike, you can be in the lane of traffic. You can take the same space as a car. So somebody honking behind kids in the bike lane is problematic for several reasons. The bike lane is a problem, but so is aggressive motorists, basically. So just wanted to kind of flag that, because as a cyclist, it's getting rough out there.
Thank you. That's an important issue. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. First off, happy birthday, Councillor Herring. June 30th, I attended the special council meeting as well. And July 1st, as Mayor Blackwell mentioned, I took the helm at one of two girls for the DOC Canada Day celebration. It Very well attended event, and I would like to extend my thanks to staff, volunteers, and Mother Nature for allowing this to happen. It was very refreshing to work in that setting for a day where, as a team, our biggest problem was where's the fried onions. It was nice, it was needed, and after the last 3 years, it was nice to finally bring that back online. I'd just like to extend my condolences also to the District of Logan Lake and the City of Merritt for their recent tragic loss of Councillor Claire Newman. I had the pleasure to spend some time at UBCM last year with Miss Newman. Her positive energy and drive to make the world a better place was a highly infectious attribute. And I believe her longevity in public office was a testament to that. So I just want to extend that out to both those communities, and hope everyone's doing well down there.
Thank you for bringing it up. I'm getting verklempt right now, so I'm not going to say anything. Councillor Matheson is online. I don't know if he has the ability to come on and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, I'm just sitting in Port Alberni. Sorry I couldn't be there today, but I've been following along. Canada Day was a great event. I enjoyed it a lot. I was suffering from severe jet lag, and I managed to slice and dice vegetables without losing my fingers. So I consider that a success. I guess my big event was spending 10 days in Germany at the Special Olympics, and I'll do a bigger report on that at the next meeting. But I found it to be a very transformative experience. It's opened my eyes to a lot of things, and at some point in the near future, I would like to see some sort of a recognition of our special athlete in Clearwater, and maybe have him come into council or have a Special Olympian Day or something. It's still working out in my head, but yeah, it was a very, very impressive event, and yeah, I'll talk more about it later. Thank you.
Thank you, and yes, absolutely, congratulations to Ryan, and I look forward to your future suggestion on how to honor him in council and the district's behalf. Moving on to Councillor Sim.
Thanks so much. Certainly echoing many of the thoughts. I think one thing that we can all also congratulate is the grads of 2023. It was probably...
I missed my invite to grad this year. I don't know where that got lost in the mail, but congratulations to the grads for sure.
Yeah, actually, it was a bit of a shocker because the school board trustee had to speak first, and normally they like to speak last, and that was reversed because they went through their administrative procedure. It appears that they have been not following proper protocol according to, so I
didn't really want to go anyways, but I just thought it was a little odd.
Well, typical to grad, it was certainly hot and lots of tears and lots of emotion, and just a really exciting group moving forward. So I think that was really fun, and certainly seeing their parade the next day. Definitely following the theme of social and how much this community has enjoyed it. Again, the gym was packed. Canada Day proved it. The paddle boarding proved it. And I do hope that the District of Clearwater, we can maybe placemark events for the fall, and even look towards where we're going to go with our volunteer appreciation if we're going to move forward with that. But I think that the secret sauce seems to be coming together. And when that happens, there is an immense sense of community building that can't be replicated in any other way. So I want to say thank you to the staff who continues to work on that. Lots of things happening in the real estate market, but one of the issues bubbling up around that is how to get insurance. And the insurance comes from, just how to get houses insured given some of the fire concerns, and working with that. And I'm wondering if, Mayor Blackwell, if that's something that's been raised at UBCM. Is there...
It has, and in my awareness that there's actually certain parts of California where you can no longer get fire insurance, even if you're in a fire protection zone. It's an overall concern, and I will bring it up at this next meeting, because that is the California situation is a relative development of this spring. So yeah, I also think it's worth a community conversation, maybe facilitated through the info board if somebody wants to take that on, to find out where people were getting their insurance from, because when I have a coffee table discussion, there are multiple places that people are getting the insurance from versus just relying on the local sources, that we're able to get them insured in a timely fashion. I think we need all hands on deck when it comes to that. Sorry.
No, I think it's really good to be alert to it, because it's a situation that's rippling up, and I don't know if the province has looked at doing something like an ICBC version for insurance. If we keep running into this, how do you get a mortgage if you can't get insurance? And that's exactly the problem. So where does that fit into our community envision? So I just wanted to raise that. So I'm glad to hear that UBCM is working on that. I did the concluding comments for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group through BC Healthy Communities. It was such a good course, like really, really great. And they're hoping to roll that out to other municipalities. And I have asked them to reach out to Mayor Blackwell, and maybe that Clearwater become a template. Super easy, and you can do it in bite-sized chunks. And what's great about it is the learning together. So there's a shared language. And so the group that I was with, they ranged from all over British Columbia. And it was great what BC Healthy Communities are doing. Lastly, in the spirit of condolences, just acknowledging the passing of Alan Selby, longtime community member, and his services this weekend, and thinking just of him and his family, and certainly the deep roots and connections that they've had. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, and more information on that if you could forward the reports you just took. I'm also dealing with mental health for elected officials once through UBCM, which I hope to be able to roll into our area, which is an initiative, I believe, of the former mayor of Coquitlam, or the current. Yeah. So moving on, 15.1, the CAO report. There's quite a long report there. If the CAO or staff wishes to comment at any point, or council has questions, please. Councillor Sim.
I've got just sort of 4 points that I wondered about. One that was really interesting to me was the work that the community recreation program is doing. Outdated policy and procedure manual. What does the process look like, and who is the third party? Is this all policies or just the staff and that procedure?
The District of Clearwater has a document that's called Policy Manual and Procedure for Community Recreation Healthy Living Programs that has been flagged since 2020 or 2021 for updating. The district has gone through the process of applying for and receiving a grant to do this work, and we're in the process of identifying a third-party consultant who could do that work for us and bring a report to council with the existing plan and a proposal for the new plan.
Oh, I got excited that I thought it was all policies and there was a third party, so thank you for that clarification. It's only for that program. The next question was around the EV charging stations, which I thought was exciting, and I think that, Mr. Prime, you've been sitting in on those discussions. I didn't know if there was an update. There seems to be lots of activity with Tesla and some of their amalgamations.
Yes, unfortunately, still no update on it. I know the Tesla is saying it's slated to start construction in the fall, but we haven't seen any updates beyond that. And some of the other infrastructure we have not progressed forward on as well at this time. But a lot of initial discussions are happening at this time.
Great. And then the last one is just in regards to the iCompass management project. It's been on the CAO report for a couple of months. How's it coming? Are you feeling positive about it, and is it making strides?
Good. It's reached just about substantial completion. There's a couple loose ends, but the actual document center, where most of the documents are being held, is finally organized in a state that we actually like right at this stage.
And iCompass will be preparing a presentation for council, and will be attending a council meeting to demonstrate the changes that have been made over the last 6 or so months.
It's been a big project, so thank you for sticking with it. Thank you very much.
Yes, and on your point on the car chargers, any of you that are attending UBCM, please visit the Community Energy Association. They're a great organization that gets funding and to lobby and have conversations about that with. To Mr. Prime's point about Tesla this fall, I've been hearing Tesla this fall since my first term as mayor.
Listen, TMX came, so maybe charging stations too.
I think Tesla and TELUS are running on the same schedule for advancement. So anyways, we'll just go with that. Thank you for all your reports and for the CAO report. I believe we are now on item 16.1. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So there is a staff report on the replacement of Tender 3 and Bush Truck 1 chassis. And a recommendation for council. Mr. Smith is here, so he has explained to us, some of us on council, what's going on here, but maybe for the record and the public, you can explain what we're doing here.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Blackwell. My report starts on page 90 of the package. A little bit loud there.
Doing that?
So this year we were approved to, council approved replacing Tender 3's chassis through initial research and looking for that chassis. We haven't found one. The timeline to get a new one ordered is 6 to 8 months. In the business case that we provided, we were going to do the Bush Truck chassis next year. That truck is a little bit more available on the lots out there. So this report's asking to switch the allocations from 24 for the Bush Truck and then order the chassis for the Tender to receive it next year.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions from council on this? If not, go ahead, Councilor.
I just want to make sure, so when switching, so it won't impact the budget, it's just a line item adjustment? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So what is the wish of council on the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Sim. Seconded by Councilor McKenzie because he was first. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Thank you. Capital Road Program. There is a staff report there as well. Oh, sorry, Councilor Matheson, did you have a question or comment on anything here? Oh, he just raised your hand.
Might have been a vote.
We're just gonna see if he's coming off mute.
No, I'm good. I accidentally hit the chat button.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the Capital Road Program, item 16.2. Comments from staff on that?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I've been working on the Capital Road Program with our roads contractor, identifying some of the best places to spend the capital money. We've picked some roads that don't have utilities underneath them, so that so we can make the money go a little farther. If there's utilities under most of the roads that are in poor condition, and the utilities need to be replaced as well. So we've picked the Candle Creek Road to do portions, the worst portions, and partially fully rebuild those sections and overlay other sections. And the second road is Myrtle Crescent, between the Bilo entrance and Park Drive. And that we estimate using about $200,000 on that, and then using the remainder, remaining $100,000 on stormwater infrastructure that is affecting the road. So building new ditches where ditches are missing, and putting in infiltration basins and that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you. The quick question on that is just to explain for the public, if your road bed or your asphalt is underwater or constantly taking water, it deteriorates at a faster rate. That's my experience, our understanding.
It does, yes.
Okay. That's what I have for now. Any further questions? Councillor Herring.
Will the work on Myrtle Crescent require significant closure of that area or adjustment?
It looks like we can detour traffic around it.
I guess the reason I'm asking is we've had a lot of complaints about the intersections there right in front of the clinic, and the intersection between the Bilo and Myrtle Crescent itself. And I'm just wondering if we're going to be opening up road bed, blocking it off, if it might be a time to start looking at changing the layout of those intersections.
Okay, and the work planned for Park Drive will be for next year. Yeah. In that area, that in front of the clinic.
So the Myrtle Crescent be further towards the spray park, or where are we talking?
Yeah, well, so it'd be between the Bilo entrance and Park Drive.
Okay.
There's, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you can answer this publicly, but I'll put it out there. Are we in process with Trans Mountain for repairs to their road sections at this point?
Yes, they have scheduled a date.
Okay, I think that's all I think everybody would be comfortable with at this point.
I have a question.
We
Go
will,
ahead, Councillor Bratton. Oh, sorry,
we
Mr.
will
Thomas.
be doing communications out. We're just finalizing some details at this point, but more information will go out shortly.
Councillor Bratton.
Would Robson Street be included with Myrtle Crescent or Myrtle, whatever you tell them it's the same name?
Not in this budget. It'll,
Okay. Is when where we dug up the sewer?
Oh,
Is that-
that will be patched? Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay. What's the time frame?
Well, it'll be this summer.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific date yet.
Okay.
Councillor Sim, you had a question?
No, Councillor Bratton did a great job. So does the patching of Robson come out of a different pocket?
Yes, that's a different budget. That's sort of the operations.
Okay, that's, yeah, no, I think, yeah, I didn't.
Yeah.
I just think that it's marvelous. You have no idea how many people will be happy about Candle Creek. I'm sure your inbox will go down to about this big as a result of that. Just on the Candle Creek one, are these going to be repairs that are outside of the ones that were done a few years ago, or are you noticing that the repairs done a couple of years ago are in vulnerable areas?
I guess I don't have the knowledge to know which ones were done a few years ago. I mean that there's quite a few patches on the road, but I don't know which ones are the most recent.
Okay, I don't know either.
The worst.
Yeah.
Yes. There would be lots to
New or
choose
old
from.
worst, they're still the worst. We'll go with that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And I think it's important to note, and you can ask another question after this if you wish, the amount of money that it costs to do what we're talking about, which is not a lot of distance, and I think the citizens of Clearwater should go have a look at it when it's done, that's $200,000 worth of work, and roads are so incredibly costly and such a large part of what we are required to manage financially, asset manage, future plan for. Councillor Sim, do you have further?
I have two. One, I think your idea is brilliant, and it should be a before and after and a cost assessment in the efforts of education. I think you've got a great idea. I also want to thank you very much for the education on the stormwater management. I didn't see how that tied into roads, so I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that that is an eye towards looking after the assets in a way that I hadn't pieced together. So thank you.
And I guess I should maybe clarify, Candle Creek Road, this will not be the end for Candle Creek Road. So this would probably be year one of a 5-year project, possibly to.
I think just being mentioned is just fantastic. There's a lot of gratitude, just because everybody is aware of the depth there.
So council work, advocacy at UBCM for more infrastructure funding for roads. All other projects, even water systems, seem to be sexier for government grants than roads. We need to lobby for roads. So there is a recommendation. What is the wish of council? They want to move? Moved by Councillor Sim, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Thank you. Excellent news. Financial update, March 31st, 2023. There is a staff report. This is for information, but if, yeah, go ahead. Ms. Director Klassen.
Good afternoon. I have a short presentation just to go through the first quarter of 2023, January to March. The financial update is a function of governance and financial controls. The report provides council with information and accountability tool and transparency. Go to the next slide, please. There we go. The first quarter results are issued here as March 31st. The late issuance of this report is mainly due to the financial plan bylaw approved in mid-May and resources and challenges that we have in our departments from time to time. The report is issued at the same time frame as it was in 2022, and we are looking forward to providing council with a second quarter financial update at the August council meeting. The next slide, please. These are a lot of numbers, and you have the report in front of you. However, this is a report that represents the revenues of the district. The first column there is your categories at the far left as you're looking at the screen under the green arrow. The red circle items there are the budget or financial plan. You see that I have the financial plan, proposed amendments, and the adjusted. So at this point, as of March 31st, I have no amendments to the plan. And then on your far right, you'll see a percentage of budget. If we are at 25% of budget, we're tracking towards the budget at the right level, at the right targets. If we're tracking a little bit more on the revenue side, it means we're doing better. And the blue arrow are year-to-date actuals. And under there is the sales of services. So those are things like septage receiving and all the little things that we provide services for. It's tracking on budget or on target. We have a government transfer, which includes the Growing Communities Infrastructure Grant, the $1.5 million. So that's where that is sitting at the moment. And we have received several grants, like the Wayfinding Grant and the Flood Mapping Grant. And other revenue represents interest. So those are our revenues. We're on track for that. The next slide, please. On our expenditure side, those are expenses. Those are things we pay for. This slide represents expenditures which are running within the 25% of budget target. These costs will include special operating costs. We have not really delved into the special operating projects at this point, but one of our largest projects, which is coming up, is our cell 2 for $731,000. So you'll see that on the sewer services line. And the Sportsplex is a bit higher than target just due to the seasonal nature of that department being, its expenditures while it's open during the early months in January and February. New to this slide pack, next slide please. I have provided you with an update of council contingency because from time to time we get asked that question, and the resolution. So there you go, you have $44,000 left as of March 31st. So I'll go through all the resolutions up to June and provide you with an update next. And last but not least, we have the projects. The District of Clearwater is now working on 49 projects this year. The first quarter is typically slow for projects as a financial plan bylaw is adopted in May and the district waits for the spring and to begin construction and things like that. In the first quarter, we worked on the following projects: the council chamber audio video items, the annual computer replacement, the budget software implementation project was kicked off and we purchased that software, and completing the cell 1. Also, I just wanted to provide council with a quick update of where we are today. I know it looks like we're just working on 8 projects, but I have a feeling that we're working on a lot more. So I've asked our staff just to provide you with a quick update. If I could ask Elsid to just provide us with the projects that he's been working on quickly.
Somebody else want to go and catch up to Sid? Mike? Mr. Smith, sorry.
Sure. So the projects for the protective services, okay. A turnout gear replacement. Oh, sorry. Can you guys go to 102, please? Sorry. The Schedule B financial update. So under the fire department, the turnout gear replacement is all ordered. We're waiting for it to arrive. Tender 3 and bush truck chassis replacement. the report provided earlier. Fire training equipment, that was a grant from UBCM. We have received all but one item that's on board there. But that is it for me on this report.
Thank you.
Yeah, backtracking just to the council chambers audiovisual upgrade, that is substantially complete. It's about 97% done. I'm still waiting on the equipment for the hearing aid loop as well. It's just been back ordered and has not even shipped yet. The annual computer replacement is nearly done at this stage as well. We've completed the server upgrades and we have ordered the remainder of our IT replacement for the year. And the website renewal hasn't begun yet.
Perhaps the manager of Parks and Facilities?
You have to go up to a mic, obviously, because we're on.
The Parks vehicle has been purchased. We're just completing the paperwork on it, and it will be picked up next week. If I can skip down the list, the rooftop air conditioning units for this building, an engineer has been hired and is completing a study and hopes to be going to tender with that shortly, with the eye on doing the replacement in September when we need neither heating or cooling for a few weeks. The roof renovation at the Sportsplex came in over budget. Council, council would be receiving a staff report at the next meeting about that. The dehumidifiers are currently on BC bid. The sound system has been repaired for a cost of approximately $5,000, and that $40,000 will not be required. 37 East, you've seen the latest design, and we're waiting for public input on that. And I believe that, second floor expansion, which is on the next page at the Sportsplex. We've been in a series of meetings with the engineer, myself, Director of Operations, and our Recreation Coordinator, and I hope to have a staff report for you on the next meeting as well.
Thank you. Anybody who's next?
Director of Operations?
Oh, sorry, yeah, question if you want, before Roger loses the mic.
Yeah, just on that, I think under the DLCC building, I didn't hear you reference anything for the generator.
Director Rob.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, just find my projects. So we've talked about the annual capital program. I've already discussed that. That is underway. Public Works yard expansion. The fencing will be getting started on the 20th of this month. Critical spare asset management program. We are just making a list. We haven't purchased anything as of yet. The generators, well 1 and 3, is tendered and it actually closes today. Under the sewer, cell 1 phase 2 sludge drying bed is complete. And critical spare, same thing, we're making the list. CCTV sewer inspection equipment. We're in the process of purchasing that as well. The water leak study is underway this week. Water assessment study is in the planning stages. Clearwater Valley Road supply main design has started as well. The desludging project is underway. We're scheduled to have we're scheduling a meeting for to go over some of the details, but we're preparing to purchase the aerators and install those and tender for the desludging. Hospital lift station design is underway. And the stormwater master plan is on this agenda. And the siphon project has not yet started, but it'll start in the fall. If I missed anything. Did I miss
Looks
something?
like you got it all, I think. First,
Just in regards of the $100,000 that has just been allocated for the stormwater management, will those funds be utilized this year, or because I'm not quite clear how long it's going to take for the report to be done, or if there's notable ones that are just easy pickings?
The intention is to start the stormwater management plan.
Great, thank you.
ASAP.
thank you. Any further questions on it? It's quite the list. I just like to say this: the CCTV sewer camera system is the worst TV show ever, and that's a pretty low bar. But yes, thank you for all the work on this. It's nice to see so many of these things coming along, especially pavement patches and things like that. Any further comments from staff or questions from council?
I have one question.
Further comments?
Sorry, Councillor Bratton has one more question.
I just saw the cemetery bylaw on there, and I'm just curious if that'll be done or where we're at with that.
The cemetery bylaw, the water and sewer bylaws are where we are is in the process of starting to draft those, but there has been a transition underway. So yes, Anna and I will be talking about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? If not, there is a recommendation to receive this for information. Sorry, Councillor Sim, and then
Yeah, I just wanted to go. One of the commitments that council had made was moving forward and getting ready for next year's budget earlier. Is this the time to ask what staff might need in terms of that?
To prepare the budget earlier, we would require resources. And we're working on reviewing the applicants for the senior accounting position, and we're also working on implementing the software. There's quite a bit of effort to do that, to convert our financial systems, which do not necessarily fit nicely into a more progressive system. So we're working at trying to work through that. So it's not, we can begin earlier, but we may not have the Questica system monitor or to use that system earlier. I'm targeting September-ish.
Okay, and then a secondary question to that is, as we move into the 2024 cycle, that in our current budget that we voted on, there's a number of projects that were grant dependent, like the siphon and some different things. Is there a plan to look at that? Should we be looking at financing it? Should we be looking at different models, or just you'll let us know?
We should be looking at it.
What would be the best path to do that?
Well, through the budget process and how council what council's will is and what their principles and procedures are when it comes to financing versus savings. So
financing, saving, or waiting for grants to
or waiting for grants. Yeah. There's all those funding models out there. We need to decide. Council needs to decide what they would prefer.
Yes.
And we can provide recommendations at that point.
And I absolutely think that's it's not to put anybody on the spot right now, and I don't think we will.
No.
But yes, I think that is definitely a discussion for council in the next few months. Is what is our tolerance for debt and borrowing? Getting a better understanding, and we will learn some of this through UBCM and watching grants happen. What's actually happening in the world of grants right now? What's being supported? What's not? Once again, roads is generally not being supported. And then what's the plan to start tackling these things? Because we have a lot of stuff to tackle.
So supplemental to that is, I'm just wondering, because even with sort of the last reportings, we've seen an increase in costs. And I'm wondering, when do we start researching those costs so that council can actually make some decisions about debt load? So if we're looking at a siphon project that's maybe gone from 1.2 to 2.2, if it keeps going up, having up-to-date numbers, when should that be actioned? How should that be done? How would staff like to be directed? And council, I don't know what your thoughts are.
So, on the operating project list, we do have a safe and project engineering, for $100,000. That is scheduled for this current year. Once that's complete, we would have a better idea how much that's gonna cost.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. Further thoughts from council? There is a recommendation for acceptance on this. Somebody want to move in second, accepting this report? Moved by Councillor Herring, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? That passes. Moving on to integrated stormwater management plan and extended flood mapping and mitigation plan. There's another staff report here as well, and a recommendation. And we'll go to Mr. Carmichael, I guess, is going to answer questions on this.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Yeah, these projects were grant funded and applied for last year, and they're both awarded. One for stormwater management, $112,000, and one for flood mitigation at $146,000. The intention was to have True Engineering complete the stormwater management design and flood mitigation plan, and then next year to apply for the construction portion of the grant from what comes out of the study.
Thank you. Are there any council questions on this? I mean, we're watching what's happening around the world.
Yeah.
I think it's something in Clearwater we may not have considered with water management as much as we normally do, other than, you know, what we talked about earlier on road structure. But I think it's between the dike issues and stormwater management, I think it's very important that we do this kind of work.
I think Council.
Councillor McKenzie has got, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Blackwell. But the flood mitigation projects, is that aimed strictly at the dike and the flats? Or is there other areas in particular you're looking at?
It's aimed at the Clearwater River as well as the Thompson. So any portion of the river that's within the municipal boundary, we are actually flood mapping that with LiDAR radar, having that data stored in a way that it's usable for identifying low-lying areas for developing future bylaws that may impact development in known or confirmed flood zones, as well as protecting municipal infrastructure.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Simpson.
And I'm just confirming in it that we're on target, like these dollar values match. We're not asking for any additional funds.
100% funded by UBCM.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I have to agree, Mayor Blackwell, with what you're saying is the attention on stormwater management. Just watching what happened in Kamloops the other day really brought to light about what some of our streets and roads, and I think you're so accurate to say let's keep an eye on that and have a wider lens to maybe what we have had in the past.
So there is a recommendation that council award the two projects to True Engineering to complete the stormwater management plan with a budget of $112,000 and flood mitigation projects with a budget of $146,120. What is the desire of council?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor? Awesome. Thank you. Oh, one of our favorite topics. Item 16.5, Dutch Lake temporary line marking.
Who wants to take this one?
Feeling brave today.
I will jump in. So, yeah, we have not had paint in the Dutch Lake area, and it's causing confusion. And we've settled on a design. And our intention is to do a mail out and explaining to residents what we're doing and what the new changes are, and complete temporary line marking so that people can get used to it and they can give us feedback. And we want to put this out at the same time as the 37 East. And we're going to put up some poster boards and have our contact information on there.
Okay,
speaking with our roads contractor, they're prepared to do the temporary line painting right away. So
awesome.
as early as next week.
As early as next week.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Frizzle.
We do have the line painters coming to town in less than 10 days. So the only concern with doing Steg Hill with temporary line paint would be that they wanted, like, the tape. They would have to scrape the tape off before they put the paint back on. So, yeah.
Thank you for the update on the 10 days. Mr. Thomas.
I'm not sure if Director Carmichael explained this, but staff had some very robust internal discussion about the line painting. And we came to the resolution that the temporary approach is actually better so that we could start training the community on what the full permanent solution is going to be. And if that is not working, to identify potential pain points so that we can change the design before we put it down on the ground a second time and have to remove and do it a third time. Secondly, Director Carmichael has expressed an interest, and I very much support that, to do a multi-year contract with a line painting company so that we're not so far in the queue annually. There needs to be additional conversation about the type of paint used in certain areas or certain strategies for high traffic areas to reduce the risk of the lines disappearing so quickly.
All of that is awesome. Any questions? Councillor Sim. And
yeah.
Councillor Bratton.
Oh, go ahead. Go, Councillor Bratton, you go ahead.
There's an option of quality of paint to pick that we make that decision, or do they say this is the only paint available, we can only use this?
Yeah, I think there's inlaid thermal paint that you can use that's about half a centimeter thick.
Yep.
It's quite expensive to lay down, but it should last for multiple years. I'm gonna weigh out the options, pros and cons of doing that versus having them lined up to come every year to paint.
Right.
So it is because we're getting rid of oil paint worldwide, I think. So.
I see.
Yeah, so example of thermal paint in town that I know of is the crosswalks and the roundabout, I believe, were done in thermal paint.
Right.
So that's why they've lasted for multiple years. It's quite a different process and very expensive compared to, you wouldn't necessarily want to do with center lines. Okay, Mr. Thomas.
I just want to flag for council, if there is any changes council desire made to the design, please do this now. Every change made by the District of Clearwater requires changes from the engineer, requires changes in communication strategy, requires financial considerations, and those create additional delays. I implore the district to commit to no further changes so that we can actually move forward to implement.
You're talking specifically around Dutch Lake.
Yes, Your Worship.
And specifically about the parking curb versus barriers.
Okay, thank you. Having read this current one, I am supportive of this design. Questions, comments from other council?
Councillor Frizzle has one, yeah? Oh. Councillor Herring?
For me, I support the communication plan. I think it's great. Just want to make the point that I support the communication plan, not the plan for the drawings. I'm not a fan of the design, but I am a fan of the communication plan.
Further, Councillor Sim?
So maybe just because of the fair warning that's come to us, is maybe you could just make sure we're all aware of what the two options are for the barriers that might cause some concern. Like, let's hear it out. I find it hard to see it on the diagrams, and it sounds really, really good.
So it's all about transportation specifications. So once you use the larger barrier, then you have to have more clearance between the road shoulder painted line, white line, and the barrier itself. You need 1.5 meters. And in order to narrow that gap, they could put a railing along the top of the barrier, but then we're adding another $100,000 to the project. As far as the roadway would have to either get narrower, or we would have to spend a lot more money to get that barrier on top. Or the trail could get narrower, yes. Or a little bit of both.
So just to clarify the communications strategy, Councillor Herring, you found it to be good. I wasn't sure, like, what is the timeline? Like, is the mailing going to go out first? Is it out on the website? Is it all done at once? Like, what is the strategy, noting that in 10 days they'll be here?
We will treat it similar to how we treat newsletters. We will send out a one-pager to all mailboxes in Clearwater. We will certainly put that information on our website and our Facebook page, which will then be shared with the info board.
So as part of what I've just heard here is that if there's feedback on the plan as we get people used to it, what is the engagement process? Like, what is there an email address that people are encouraged to use? How do we capture those thoughts so it's not a blurt session, so it's a controlled environment?
Well, that's a great question. So we will be directing feedback through the feedback@docbc.ca email address. One of the areas we need clarity actually from council is, does council want us to seek feedback? Because if you're seeking feedback, is the expectation that those feedbacks will be considered and changes to the design will be made?
Right.
Or is this just to inform the community of the design approved by the District of Clearwater? Those are two very different things. Right now, where we landed internally and from the previous council meetings is that we are informing the community of the design chosen. But if there is a different direction, please clarify.
And I think it's critical and mentioned by Mr. Carmichael that there are vast cost differences in various aspects of this design. I do have the concerns about the barriers and potentially the rails. But seeing the cost difference on that, I think that the option presented here is something worth trying at this point versus the last thing. But yes, I am very certain that the public will give us feedback. But I think all of us on council, it's up to, when we get an understanding and we see that communication plan, get that feedback. Ask for that feedback from your friends, neighbors, and coffee table acquaintances.
Right. So from what I understand and I guess that's why it's important to understand the thrust of the communication plan. So is it leading off with that this design has been chosen because of cost and safety combined? Like, it's just fine to say let's have a communication strategy, but what are we communicating? Like, here's how we use it without having the why. Like, I think that's an important element to understand.
A big portion is explaining why we're using temporary road markings, because it's going to look a little different than the rest of the painting. They're going to have questions about that, and just letting them know that it can be altered if it isn't functioning as we intend.
Okay, that's good. And I think a critical point in noting in this, and you brought it up, Mr. Carmichael brought it up, one of the largest criticisms of the last design was the narrowing of the roads. And this plan here doesn't narrow the road.
It returns it, from what I understand.
Turns it back to the 3.5 if we go with the recommendation here, which was a huge critical thing. Councillor Bratton.
May I make a suggestion that part of the communication put out there is we know that's why we're here, is we have the best interest of everybody at heart, but actually portray that in part of the communication. Safety is of utmost importance. Money is the next one. I really think we need to put out there that we care and we hear you and we understand. And I would love that to be part of it, if it wasn't already.
And also, if we're gonna ask for that feedback, as the mayor has suggested, is being clear about when we're going to review it and what we'll do with it, so that there's a community expectation that we can manage. So it doesn't go into a void. It's, all feedback received by September 30th will be reviewed at a certain date and information, assessed or something, so that there's an accountability piece that people can understand.
Thank you. I think staff will take that advisement, and thank you. So there is a recommendation that council directs staff to execute the communication plan, including temporary line markings for the revised parking multi-use trail, and direct staff to incorporate the wheel stops combined with tubular delineators mounted on top into the design. What is the wish of council? Anybody want to move it? 16.5.
Scared.
Because the option is tabling it.
No, I will move the recommendation, and I move the recommendation in the spirit of the fact that we do need to do something. Safety measures have certainly been of great concern. We're seeing some of the problems that Councillor Herring has referred to. Is it perfect? This is not perfect. Money would make this perfect, which we don't have. But we are trying to encompass all of the elements of the fact that this is a really loved part of our community. We want people to be safe. We want to encourage active transportation. We've worked in several meetings with the Trails Task Force. We've brought up the engineers. We've heard a variety of input and feedback from the community. And this is where we've landed. Is it going to make everybody happy? No. But it's going to be a start. And if people have constructive feedback, we will be doing that. And it is temporary because we want to continue to do better. But for now, we're making a position and we're going to move forward.
Okay. Thank you for moving that. Thank you for your comments. Councillor Patton, you're seconding that. Further comments? All those in favor? Okay, that passes. Opposed? Councillor Herring, noted opposed. Thank you. Bylaws, everybody's favorite thing. Item 17.1. Council procedure bylaw number 268, amendment bylaw number 284. There is a recommendation. What is the desire of council? Moved by Councillor Frizzle, seconded by.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. This is for adoption, so the discussion is actually me reading this out loud. District of Clearwater bylaw number 284, 2023, a bylaw to amend District of Clearwater Council Procedure bylaw number 268, 2022. Whereas section 137 of the Community Charter provides that the power to adopt a bylaw includes the power to amend or repeal it, and whereas the Council of the District of Clearwater wishes to amend the District of Clearwater Council Procedure bylaw number 268, 2022, now therefore the Council of the District of Clearwater in an open meeting assembles and acts as follows. This bylaw may be cited as the Council Procedure bylaw number 268, amendment bylaw number 284, 2023. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you. No more night, and that essentially, yes, that cleans up some stuff, but also no more night meetings until we amend it again. There is no correspondence response required. There are 2 items under correspondence information only. Any comments? Councillor Herring?
Yeah, I'd like to send a letter in support to the UBCM recommendation by the City of Prince George about reimbursing local governments for medical services provided by local government fire and rescue. With BC Ambulance's poor structure and lack of ability to fulfill their basic mandate, municipalities are taking on more and more chunks of providing basic emergency health services, and the provincial government needs to pay for it one way or the other.
Okay.
So I would love to see a letter of support go out from us on
So
that.
you're moving a letter of support on that. Seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor Frizzle. All those in favor, and I will let you have, there's a Prince George letter or recommendation there, but it would be great if you can assist staff in the wording on that. That would be great. There are no notices of motions. Item 2022, public question and comment period. Are there questions? Annabelle?
Is this temporary line painting? No. Temporary line painting going to be, marking going to be going on and on and on? Why don't we have it permanent at the start? I've lived here since 1977. I've never heard anything so crazy than this. I've got friends, my neighbor she doesn't like the 30-kilometer zone, and a lot of people don't. So is this going to be permanent, or is this going to be temporary?
So there's 2 aspects to this, and I'll let Mr. Carmichael or Mr. Thomas speak to it. Sorry, we do have people online, so 2 aspects to this. One, I think there's some confusion on the quality of general line painting. So we now these days we repaint all the lines every single year. That's because the quality of paint has changed from an oil-based paint to a water-based paint that doesn't last anywhere near as long. What we're talking about, the temporary line painting, is until we decide on a final decision for just the area up here, Actually, I'm gonna let Mr. Carmichael define the temporary line painting area. If you, and you can't because you just gave away the mic, but you can probably borrow one from next door there. Because I don't want to get it wrong.
We are just talking about There we go. So just the Dutch Lake area from the 37 East parking lot that's being proposed to the top of the hill past the lake, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's essentially the Chuck Wagon restaurant for those with the local, to the end of the Dutch Lake parking lot area is essentially where we're talking about this for now, right?
And,
37, yeah, so yes, anyways.
and the intention is to put a permanent yellow line down the center line. It's just that all the parking and everything that will be a temporary.
So some of it will be permanent along that stretch, just the changes we've made to design temporary.
Yes.
Okay. So 99% of town is gonna be permanent. This very small portion, until we are certain we can make it permanent, will be.
And once we have the feedback and we're sure we'll add it to our program for next year to be done in the spring.
I hope that explains things, helps you out a little bit better. Further comments from the public? If not, we do have to move into camera. The meeting needs to be closed to public pursuant to sections 91 A, C, F, I, and K of the Community Charter to discuss matters related to personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality, labor relations or other employee relations, law enforcement, if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were made public. That is the longest version I have ever read of that. Can I get a mover and a seconder on that? All those in favor? And we will take at least a 10-minute recess to get everything organized here. Thank you.
Sure. I was thinking about with that.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't see.
I'm not entirely clear.
I
So
didn't
now
know where
that's
it is.
going to be on the dirt.
So I didn't know if I.